When you hear the word audit, what's the first thing that pops into your head? I'm guessing it's probably stress, mountains of paperwork, and, a bunch of people in suits looking for mistakes. But what if we looked at it differently? What if an audit wasn't just some scary compliance thing, but actually a vital health checkup for your business? Let's dig into that.
Seriously, take a second and think about that. Every single organization, no matter how big or small, has a blind spot. It's some risk they just can't see, or a process that's been quietly breaking for months. Well, auditing? That's the tool that's literally designed to find that blind spot before it causes some real damage.
Okay, so to really wrap our heads around what auditing is all about, you've got to understand its two main jobs. It's kind of like having two different sets of eyes, one that's constantly looking out at the world and another that's looking deep inside the organization itself.
And this right here, this is the key. Auditing serves two masters. One of its jobs is to build trust with all the outsiders. We're talking investors, regulators, the public. The other job is to help the internal team, the people on the ground, get better, smarter, and way more efficient.
So here's how that whole split actually plays out. On the left, you've got the statutory audit. This is all about looking out. It's required by law, the shareholders appoint the auditors, and its whole purpose is to give outsiders confidence that the financial numbers are solid. Then on the right, you have the internal audit, which is all about looking in. Management appoints these folks to hunt down risks and find ways to improve how the company actually runs day to day.
So that statutory audit, yeah, that one's non-negotiable for registered companies. It is a legal requirement, plain and simple. It's there to make sure there's a basic level of transparency for everybody, and the goal is always to provide a true and fair view of the company's books.
An internal audit, though, that's a different story. That's usually a strategic choice. It's a tool that management uses to get a totally objective look at their own operations. To find those little inefficiencies and fix problems before they ever end up on those public financial statements. It's all about adding value from the inside out.
Okay, so that's the theory. But how does this all play out in the real world? Well, let's take a look at what was basically a massive, real-world stress test of corporate auditing to see these ideas in action.
So, back in 2002, after some absolutely huge accounting scandals, the U.S. government stepped in and passed the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, or SOX as everyone calls it. What it did was basically force all public companies to do this massive internal audit of their financial controls, and then hire an external auditor to double-check their work. It was a complete game changer.
In the cost? Oh, the cost was absolutely staggering. In those first few years, the average company was spending over $2.8 million just to comply with one single part of this law. I mean, this wasn't just a simple checkup. For a lot of companies, it was a complete top-to-bottom system overhaul.
So the big question was it worth it? And at first, the answer was a pretty resounding, not really. If you look at this scale, where -3 means costs far outweigh benefits, pretty much everyone was in the negative. But look at the difference here. Smaller companies, scoring around -2, felt the pain way more than the big guys, who were closer to -1.
But then, a really interesting thing started to happen. As companies and auditors got the hang of it, they got way more efficient. The whole process got smoother, and the average cost to comply actually dropped by almost 30%. It just goes to show you there's a really steep learning curve when it comes to this kind of intense self-examination.
So all of this really points to a critical shift in mindset. See, the most effective organizations, they don't just sit around and wait for the auditors to show up. They actually take a proactive approach to finding their own problems.
The best way to think about this is like preventative care for your business. A proactive audit is when you deliberately go hunting for trouble. You're looking for potential risks, for any compliance gaps, long before an incident forces your hand. It's all about staying ahead of the curve. And this isn't just some abstract idea. Being proactive means looking at very specific, high-risk parts of the business. You're asking the tough questions, like, are our billing procedures for the really expensive stuff totally buttoned up? Are we properly vetting new vendors? Is our staff training actually working? These are the kinds of questions a proactive audit dives into.
Of course, even with the best planning, sometimes things just go wrong. And that's where reactive audits come in. This is your emergency response team. When something like a data breach happens or a huge error is discovered, a reactive audit is what you launch to figure out what happened, contain the damage, and make sure it never, ever happens again.
Yeah, being reactive is all about damage control. At this point, you're not looking for potential problems anymore. You're dissecting a very real one. The goal is to do a full root cause analysis, fix the immediate mess, like repaying overpayments, and then retrain everybody so you don't make the same mistake twice. All right, so we've looked at the two sides of auditing, looking in and looking out, and the two mindsets for how to approach it, proactive and reactive. Let's pull this all together for one final key takeaway.
You know, when you boil it all down, it really comes back to this one simple idea. Every single type of audit, doesn't matter if it's for the regulators or for your own team, is about making the organization stronger. It's about building trust with the outside world and building resilience on the inside.
And that leaves us with one last and maybe the most crucial thought. The real value of an audit isn't in the fancy report that gets filed away in a cabinet somewhere. It's in the action that you take afterward. Finding the problems, honestly, that's the easy part. Fixing them, that takes real courage and commitment. So the question isn't just about finding your blind spot. It's about what you're actually prepared to do once you found it.